In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Another lecture on the introduction to the understanding of the Quran is presented to you. The sequence is such that we are presenting the introduction to the Quran in the form of small questions, and then their answers, so that in the light of these questions and answers, we can gain an introduction to the Quran. This is because having knowledge of the introduction to the Quran is extremely important for understanding the Quran. So, let's take today's lecture question. Today's lecture question is, although the Quran has come for all of humanity, why does it predominantly reflect the temperament, environment, history, and customs of the Arabs? Let's examine this and find the answer to this question. Understand that whenever a universal movement arises, the entire world is influenced by its effects and begins to emulate it. Therefore, any movement that has impacted the whole world is referred to as a universal movement. The movement for which you, peace be upon him, were made the leader was indeed a universal movement in the world, but it was a unique movement of its kind. Examples can be given of this movement, but it cannot be compared or linked to any other movement. We can say that indeed such a movement was unique in its nature, which transformed the entire world. Certainly, to initiate such an unparalleled movement, a leader was needed, who was unique in himself, in the world, and that was your personality, peace be upon him. Now, to make this movement successful with the Prophet, peace be upon him, a nation was also needed. That had the capability to spread this movement from its starting point to the city, from the city to the state, and then from the state to the country, and from the country to the entire world. Therefore, if there was any nation in the world at that time for such a movement, it was solely the Quraysh, and, along with them, other tribes, all of whom were from Arabia. In other words, the Arab nation was endowed with the qualities of a leading nation for this movement, but at that time, it was caught in waywardness. Now, let's explore the reasons for this nation being favored with the position of leadership. It's quite interesting that until today, we have only heard this narrative, that the Arab nation was established in ignorance and, in this regard, was an extremely oppressive nation. There is no doubt about this, but let's look at the other side of the picture, which is why Allah Almighty chose this nation for His religion. The people of Hijaz were the best among the Arabs. Their greatest quality was that their virtues and abilities were still unused and preserved. Unlike other nations, they were safe from the harmful influences that the superpowers of the time, Rome and Persia, had imprinted on the world with their dominance. Now, it might be bothering us that we have always heard about the Arabs in terms of negative aspects. This is absolutely correct, and there is no doubt that they had the flaws of a barbaric lifestyle. However, the other side of the picture is that these people were also rich in virtues. Due to their nomadic lifestyle, they had simplicity in their temperament and were free from pretense and affectation. They were incredibly intelligent. Due to their close observation of the natural phenomena, they could read the signs of reality in the universe. They had the ability to live in the scorching heat and harsh climate. Because of their experiences of traveling day and night, enduring hunger and thirst, and the frequent violence and bloodshed, they possessed a remarkable resilience. Additionally, the elements of bravery and generosity were deeply ingrained in them. The memory of this nation was exceptionally sharp. They preserved not only their genealogy but also the lineage of their horses. Therefore, they could become excellent agents for deriving and conveying a system of life education to others. Their sense of honor and dignity was unparalleled and exceptional. Therefore, these people could preserve the essence of selfhood. Their language was noble and expansive, in which the essence of eloquence and rhetoric was well refined. By nature, they could easily advance in scholarly terms. Due to possessing the essence of eloquence and rhetoric, they could effectively influence others with any revolutionary message. They could succeed much better in influencing others. The Arabs were determined and resolute. If they followed a wrong path, They did so with full conviction, and when facing resistance and opposition, they did not care for their lives. These are the qualities that were present in the Arab tribes. If we review it, it reveals the human materials necessary for making a global movement successful, which was the need of the time. At that moment, it was essential to guide the nation, possessing these invaluable qualities, onto the right path. Then this becomes the nation that, once it stands for the truth, can be cut down but will not retreat. Now, if you consider, wasn't this the very human material, or human capital necessary to transform the movement of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, into a global movement? And these were the reasons why Allah Almighty chose this nation for the leadership of the world. Under the leadership of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there was a need for such individuals to be at the forefront. Therefore, it was intended to make this nation the foremost people of the Prophet Muhammad's, peace be upon him, community, and to transform this nation into a revolutionary one concerning the Islamic revolution. So, to reveal truths to this nation, and to make it a revolutionary nation, Allah Almighty mentioned in the Holy Quran the history of the Arabs, their customs, and their local color. And wherever there was a need for examples, evidence, and arguments, Allah Almighty provided references to their own evidence, examples, and arguments in the Quran to influence this nation, so that the thought of the invitation could be instilled in them, and this nation could be handed over to the Prophet, peace be upon him, to rise for the advocacy of Islam. Now, let's examine the nature of the matter from another perspective. Human knowledge and thought have a limit, so without acquiring knowledge of something, depth in thought cannot be achieved. When we study the Holy Quran, without understanding the matter, it cannot be comprehended in the depth of our thought that the Holy Quran has come for the guidance of all humanity. However, the question arises that, in it, we find ideas aligned with Arab temperament, Arab history, and Arab customs. Then, in opposition to human weakness, a person is compelled to think that the Quran, which was revealed for the guidance and direction of common people, why does it contain more of the temporary, local, and national essence of the Arabs? Let's take a look at this reality from another perspective in relation to the Quran. Understand that the purpose of human life in every aspect is servitude, and it is primarily Arab. There is no other purpose beyond this. In other words, we would call this following the religion. Wherever and whenever there has been corruption in following this religion, the threshold of the nature of corruption has always remained the same. However, beyond the threshold, the forms of this corruption have continued to change. Now, let's see what corruption is. Corruption is the deviation in any form from the path of life that the Lord has given. Here, we need to consider whether the corruption before the arrival of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the corruption that has occurred in the world after the time of the rightly guided caliphs, until today, are they not of the same nature? Have the methods of the polytheists against monotheism not always remained the same throughout every era? Has the style of religious self-interest in the form of corruption not always been the same? If the Arabs were the custodians of the Kaaba, then has the manner of custodianship in the form of corruption not remained the same in every era? At that time, if the Arabs secured their income through offerings and donations, then has the practice in this regard not taken the same form in every era? When corruption appeared in the nature of religion, have the acts of kissing hems and touching feet, which distress the essence of monotheism, not remained the same in every era? When religion becomes a business, has it not maintained this form of corruption in every era? If the customs and traditions of the Arabs were in conflict with religion, then is the true nature of corruption in every era not similarly in conflict with religion? These are the conditions that consistently contribute to the corruption in religion in every era. Keeping these matters in mind, when you study the Quran, you will find that the Quran does not miss its target in the slightest. This is why this book is for all of humanity and is a complete code of life, adorned with golden principles of guidance in every field. Alhamdulillah. Today's lecture is complete. In the next lecture, we will discuss further regarding the introduction to the Quran. From this platform, I invite you.